Chapter 32. Kudzu on the Lip of the World. By late afternoon, the heat had turned the air syrup thick, and the kudzu had crept another elbow's length down the slag heap, shouldering aside the rusted rails and the sign that read "Asshole" in flaking red letters. The mine mouths, there were many, but only one that mattered, breathed like sleeping mouths behind stitched lips. The donkey stood near the edge, narrow-hipped and patient, tail swatting at flies big as thumbnails, ears pitched to a hymn no one owned up to singing. Folks said the pit had eaten the graveyard fence first, then the new highway that was supposed to save the county, and then the Pentecostal tent that went up for 3 straight Julys and went down full of heel prints and murmurs. The pit's appetite was particular, not greedy. It wanted whatever you would call permanent. It wanted whatever you would nail to your name. I wore my old summer dress that still smelled faintly of camphor and addicts and a throat full of borrowed prayers.
The dress didn't fit right in the shoulders, but nothing does at the beginning of a becoming. From the porch of the company house, the women watched. Church fan queens and widows with paper-thin wrists, pretending not to. They whispered as if I were a storm deciding which town to spare. The men watched too, the way you watch a thunderhead you know is beautiful and also full of iron. People like to say the asshole is a hole. They're wrong. It's a mouth and a choir pit, and the lobby of a courthouse where no one's case ever gets called. It's a baptistry with no steps back up. It's a family name pronounced in a dozen buried ways. When the bray rose, hot and lacquered, it sounded like shape notes singing dragged through honey and smoke. The sound came up the slope and walked into your bones without knocking.
My mama used to say, in that sugar-dry voice that made men sit straighter, that there were only 2 kinds of time: the time before you told the truth about yourself, and the time after. She put her hand on my crown and said both kinds would break me, and both kinds would set me free. Then she died and left the talking to the donkeys. Down in the wrinkled shade by the pit, the mules chewed the briars like pennants. One brayed and split open gently as a pocketbook, and inside were smaller mules, folded like church bulletins, soft-eyed, unbothered, each stamped with a different Sunday name: Josephine, Jubal, Mercy, Eli. They clambered out and kissed the dirt with their hooves. The women on the porch turned their fans faster. The men took their hats off and on, like apology was something you could ventilate. A boy and a boy stood pale as peeled willow where the track kinked into the brush. They were holding the same cigarette between them, as if it were an oath too precious for one mouth. When their foreheads touched, the pit sighed and took another grape-sized bite of the hillside. The sheriff cleared his throat. His badge gleamed like something found at the bottom of a well. He had a son the same age. Everybody's got a son the same age, or a hunger that wears that face. Farther up, on a porch with peeling butter-yellow paint, 2 women leaned together, forearms braced, knees touching in the judgment light. They didn't look at the pit. They looked at each other, like you look at a map you can't read but still believe in. The smaller one mouthed something, and the other nodded once, the kind of nod that sinks posts. The kudzu trembled, as if it too had overheard a vow it couldn't repeat. The preacher came down in his black suit, which never wrinkled, even when his voice did. He smelled like peppermint and the fear of peppermint. "This is not a place for confusion," he said, and then looked at me as if the Lord had slipped my name into his notes. The donkeys lifted their heads and made a sound like a wind through a corn crib. One of them, we called her Sister, stepped forward and put her muzzle against my ribs until my heartbeat learned her metronome. The preacher stopped talking and watched my chest rise like a question he couldn't grade.
"Names," Sisters Bray said, though she didn't speak in words. "Bring your names." So I did. I brought all of them. The one my father used to shout from the porch when the creek went brown. The one my grandmother sang low into my hair when the world was made of fever. The one I stitched by lamplight in my own mouth. Careful, careful, 'cause people get killed for less. I brought the name I had not yet learned, but could feel like a peeled peach in the hand. I laid them in a neat stack at the lip of the world and felt the heat lift, just a finger's width. "Mercy," said the sheriff's son, not to me. Mercy was the boy with him, or the wish between them. The porch women pretended not to hear.
A mule unfolded more mules, each with eyelashes long as brush strokes, and the youngest clambered up the slope and licked salt from my wrist, as if tasting the distance between before and after. The preacher tried again.
"We have order here," he said, and something in the pit laughed, a low, well-fed chuckle like a pot-belly full of coals. A long ribbon of red clay let go and slid down, clattering like flatware. The preacher swallowed his next sentence whole, and it rattled in his throat. He touched his tie as if to confirm the knot still belonged to him. Night came in the old way, purple and gradual, a bruise you didn't notice forming. Bats stitched the edges of things. The company lights came on one by one and then decided together to be insufficient. In that dimness, the donkey eyes salted the slope, watching without malice, the way grandmothers watch, the way creeks listen. The braying returned to its low hum, an organ note nobody had to foot pump, the sound of dirt remembering rain.
Somebody asked if the pit would ever stop widening. Someone else said it would when we all told the truth at once. That sounded like gossip with boots on, but it laid down in the mind easy. The men drifted off, hats under their arms. The porch women set their fans aside like verdicts postponed. The sheriff's son and Mercy vanished into the blackberry canes, and the canes leaned in, tender as curtains. I stood a long while with Sister's breath fogging my sternum. When she pulled away, a round, wet print remained like a second heart, and I thought, let this be the one that keeps the time. Down in the asshole, the mules made their folds and refolds. The old machinery dreamed its iron dreams. The kudzu claimed what couldn't outrun it. Somewhere a child laughed in their sleep. Somewhere a mother woke to listen. For hoofbeats it meant salvation or scandal, or both.
We don't talk about miracles here. We talk about weather. We talk about who's left and who's leaving. We talk about the ground, as if the ground were not also talking back. But that night, with my names cooling on the dirt like biscuits no one dared touch, the pit said something so plain, even the preacher could have understood it if he'd stayed a minute longer. Come as what you are, and I will not swallow you. Come as what you aren't yet, and I will make room.